Russ Rogers here from the 17 Laws studio, but the studio now is in Nashville, Tennessee, Music City. First time we've actually moved the studio. We're here today with Holly Buchanan. What's the coolest thing about this is is an author, and she has written a book and workbooks on single parenting. And we run across so many single parents who are struggling, and they're just barely staying above water. They're emotionally, spiritually, physically, everything just struggling. In my opinion, it's probably the hardest job in the world to be a single parent. It's so neat to have Holly here. Holly is going to share some personal experience. She's lived it. And she actually has a bachelor's degree in human development from Vanderbilt University. She really knows this stuff. She has been through the ups and downs, and she really has a passion for single parents because she's been a single parent for a very long time. And now her daughter, who has graduated college and is on her own, getting married in the fall, and now she's coming back and taking some time and has written a book and wants to share, hey, this is the journey you can go on to as a single parent, and it's not easy. And so Holly, I'm so excited you're here. And added to this, everybody needs to know that my wife Tracy is here with us in the studio, and Holly, we all went to high school together.
We did.
Yeah, this
We
is so
did.
cool because we all played in the band together, so we were all band geeks. And then
So much
Holly,
fun.
you and my wife Tracy are clarinet players.
We're,
So that's y'all have that kindred spirit and being neighbors and spending the night with each other. So it was so cool. One of the areas that I know nothing about, but I see it all the time, and it's single parents, and it was such a delight when I came across that you had written a book on it, and then I do a little more. Then we connect and start talking, and wow, you have absolutely. You mentioned some ups and downs, but ups, it's really ups and way downs through your life. So I'm glad that you're going to be able to share some of the things. And if I ask you anything embarrassing, you can just say you don't have to answer it. So at some point, you said, "Hey, I need to share what I've learned with others. I need to put it in a book." And so, tell me about that journey of writing the book, and I'm sure you probably were helping people anyway, and so then maybe you decided to put it in print. So share a little bit about that.
okay. Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me. And it's just so exciting to get to reconnect with you and Tracy again and be able to plug into some of the great work that you've been doing. I'm amazed with how many people that you are able to help, and you just have people coming out of the woodwork. And it's so great to see you pour out and help people, and then to care about single parents too. It's just such a great blessing. So thank you so
You're
much
too
for
kind,
having
too
me.
kind.
Um, but the journey, I think, was it just started when my daughter and I got in a situation where it wasn't safe and we had to get out. And so I was more of a solo parent, single parent, 24/7. And I remember in the very beginning when I was like, okay, I don't know how to do this stuff alone. I wish I knew someone to ask. And at that time, I just didn't know many other single parents. I had a lot of married friends, not a lot of single parent friends to ask. And so I was like, it seems like there should be someone I could call to say, hey, how do you handle taking the babysitter home, and how do you juggle this or that? And
Well,
so,
and because of that, you said you're a solo parent, which
mhm.
means literally you had no one else. You didn't have an ex to call on, and how do you handle this? How do you handle that? How are we going to attack this together? Is what you're saying.
Yeah, he wasn't there for that kind of support. And if he would pop in, it would usually be issues to deal with, things to deal with versus being helpful. And so our journey was also kind of helping my daughter deal with that absence and just the different things in his life and how it affected her and how could she deal with that in a healthy way, and then also have a good and healthy life. So there were a lot of just struggles, and I think the other day I just Googled top things a single parent is faced with, and I was like, yep. It was like money, lonely, tired, sense of guilt, worried, not having someone to run decisions by, when you're trying to make a decision. Like,
And you
did
hit
I
all
handle
those.
that right? I hit all of those. Yep, many times. So hoping today that we can hit on some of those in ways that will be really helpful to people, maybe help them shortcut to something, make it their lives easier and better and more enjoyable.
Well, I think it's really cool that you've actually lived this. This isn't theory to you.
Mm-hmm.
It's experience. And a lot of stuff that I write in my books and dealing with people, most of it, if not all of it,
Mm-hmm.
I've either witnessed it or experienced it or both. And so it's great to be here. So one of the things that you just mentioned just hit me was guilt.
Mm-hmm.
What tell me about that? What kind of guilt did you deal with as a single parent early on versus how all that works?
And I think that was something I dealt with the whole time. And I kind of realized, even when I was in it, maybe I didn't realize how much guilt I was dealing with. Even if, like in our case, we didn't have a choice. But I still felt guilty that my daughter was in the situation that she was in, and that we were divorced, and this was her childhood. And so I felt like I was trying constantly to make up for that, and just had a really hard time feeling okay with it. And one of the things I've learned since then is I really probably made it harder on myself than I needed to, by carrying that around, that and all the worry, because I was like, oh man, she's got to face all this. It's not ideal. I need to make up the difference, but I'm one person, I'm not two. And I'm tired all the time, and I'm doing my best, but I'm still tired all the time. And so dealing with the guilt, I think now realizing and letting go of that. And I mean, one thing I think I would say to single parents is if you were dealing with guilt and that is something that may be getting in your way, like an extra load, that worry, that guilt, it's like carrying around an extra bag of rocks with you, and it's actually making it harder. And so today, I'd like to talk to you a little bit about some shifts that you could make that would let you release that load and make your life a little easier, and your job a little easier.
Well, feel free to expand on that now, if you want to. That's interesting,
Okay.
and I don't mind sharing this. And so I have the 17 Laws of Parenting, 17 Laws of Marriage, and in both books I have one chapter. It's almost identical in both, and it's the law of discipline, and it has to do with disciplining children. And I think if you're a single parent, or if you have both parents or step parents, however it works, a lot of those things still apply. But I don't have anything in there about being a single parent for the parent. So again, when you and I connected, I thought that was so neat, because that is huge. Like, it's the hardest job on the planet. And then when you start listing those things like guilt, which you're about to share about, the fact that you're focused on the parent, and how do you get out of this alive? How do you stay sane through all this?
Mm-hmm.
So, and you mentioned the bag of rocks, and we talked about that on the phone too. So yeah, share a little bit about that while we're on that.
Okay. So things like worry and guilt and maybe beating yourself up, I figured out, and these are things that, maybe it took me 25 years to figure out. So I was like, hey, I'm on the other side of this. And now I can tell people that I realized that I did make it harder on myself than it needed to be. And I'm in that process of learning how to let all that go. But an underlying thing that I was dealing with that I think is super helpful for single parents, and kind of the root cause of some of our struggle, maybe every human struggle,
Right.
is self-love. And I think sometimes we can feel like thinking of self-love is selfish. We just need to be taking care of our kids. But it's actually a root thing that we can do that kind of fortifies us and fills us up and makes us able to be better parents. It's not selfish. I used to try to remind myself of what I called the oxygen mask theory. It's like, it's when you're in a plane and the oxygen mask drop, they tell you, be sure you put yours on first, not your child's.
Right.
Because you need to be awake and alive to be able to put it on them and take care of them. And another thing that since then has also occurred to me is, those oxygen masks, no one is going to put it on for you. So when we talk about self-love and self-care, it's up to you. No one's going to come around and say, here, let me do your self-love for you. That oxygen mask is something that we have to put on, and we have to remember to take care of ourselves. And I think there's different parts of self-love. And when we talk about the guilt or the not feeling good about yourself or the questioning or the worrying and the ways you may be beating yourself up, that was an aha moment for me, because if you had said, do you love yourself? I'd be like, yeah, I love myself. Like, of course I do. What are you talking about?
Not sure what that means, but sure.
Yeah, I love myself. We're good. It's all good. But I had some instances where I started listening to the way I was talking to myself, and I realized that the little voices in my head were very critical. They're like, oh man, you shouldn't have done that. Why didn't you do that?
Yeah.
Why aren't you doing that any better? I can't believe you just did that. How could you? And you need to be doing this. And I was actually beating myself up on the inside when, and making it worse. And so when we talk about self-love, there's some things that we can do to be accepting of ourselves as we are, to be forgiving, to give ourselves grace and love and care.
I'm going to stop there just a second on the self-love and care and grace and how you do that. That'd be really neat. But what you started saying about taking care of yourself, that is so counterintuitive.
It is.
Because you go to parents and say, oh, I'm worn out, I'm beat, because I've got to do all this stuff for my children. And then because you're doing all this stuff, not that any of that's not important, and I don't know what this stuff is. Sometimes it's dinner, giving them a bath, putting them to bed. It's some practical stuff that absolutely has to happen. But you can't really do that if you don't take care of yourself.
Yeah.
And so it seems a little counterintuitive.
It does.
Because I even have, for me, like exercising, for example, I have people say, hey, I'm too tired to exercise. And for me, the more I exercise, the more energy I have. So I exercise every day. And the days that I don't exercise are the days that I don't have the energy. And it's really counterintuitive until you experience it. And so I think about what you're talking about. If you're not taking care of yourself, I would say that makes the self-talk and all that stuff, is what you're saying, is 10 times worse.
Yes, it does. And I don't know if any of you can relate, but I mean, I remember thinking there were 3 shifts today. That morning shift, sometimes getting everybody out the door where we need to be was the hardest.
And still be friends after it happens.
Well, everybody be alive and get to where they needed to be. And then get to work and be like, oh, okay, that was the hard shift. And then work, and then come home and it's like, okay, now it's the night shift.
Game on.
The homework and all of that. And just being exhausted and then getting up and doing it again, and maybe even having a hard time sleeping, or falling asleep, or getting that rest, or getting some mental downtime type of thing. And I remember that it was a lot of, no, I'm okay, I'm doing it. And then suddenly I would just get burned out, and I'd be like, good grief, I'm done. I need to find someone who can, watch my daughter for a little while, because I got to have a break. Like, I am burned out. And
when you call yourself burned out, what is happening? Are you having a meltdown, or are you just mentally, physically, emotionally exhausted where you just don't even know how you can make it the next day?
It's just kind of when you go, okay, I'm done. I'm just done. It's no mental energy, emotion. You just get that point where you're like, I've got to have a break and I've got to rest to be able to handle things.
And do it now.
Yes, and I need to do it now. And so sometimes it would feel like, okay, so I need to schedule in some time for myself, and then that would feel like just one more thing on my list. And, it's like my list is full. I'm in survival mode. I'm doing taking care of what I can. I can't add one more thing if now I've got to,
Right.
get a babysitter, get some time to myself. And it can actually be more simple than that. And like you were saying, that the counterintuitive part, I think, is realizing that sometimes when we take that little bit of time to take care of ourselves, whether it's time with a friend or time to take a little walk around the neighborhood or listen to some relaxing music, meditation music on YouTube and breathe, or a little bit of movement, stretching, yoga, exercise, a little bit of reading, a little bit of TV, but not keeping yourself up too late. And a little bit of time can really give you return on your investment to where you can make better use of your time. And I think that's the key is kind of like a car. You can wait till the car breaks down, or you can do maintenance along the way so it'll go longer, farther, faster with the maintenance.
Yeah, I think that's awesome. One of the things that kept coming to my mind where you're saying that is the similar car analogy, in that sometimes we're on a trip and we're in a hurry and we don't have time to get there, and we don't have time to stop for gas. Well, if you don't stop for gas, it's going to get worse.
Exactly.
So you have to stop for gas. Otherwise, it's going to take twice as long. It'll be twice as hard on you. And in this case, you've run out of gas, and you just have to. You're going to have to stop and put gas in the car. Otherwise, you're not going to make it.
Right.
And it's going to be, again, counterintuitive. You're going to have to do it, or to make it easier. And like you said, it seems a little selfish because not too many people think that way, but they do get burned out. And some of the things I would imagine I've seen single parents who get pretty burnt out, and that self-talk, and then they're probably yelling at the kids, and they're probably hating their job, and really it's not shame on them for doing those things. It's at all, because I understand they're frustrated and it's hard, and I can't imagine having to do that, especially if you got 3 or 4 small kids in the house at the same time, which does happen. But to keep that from happening, you got to take care of yourself. And some of those things that we chatted about when we connected, one of the things you said, give yourself a break. What do you think like the healthy side of that is? Is there like a healthy exercise, eating right part of that you recommend, or is there? And you mentioned taking some downtime. And what do you call downtime? Especially like someone has a couple of toddlers in the house, and it's not always women; it's men too that end up being single parents for whatever reason. So what are your thoughts on like how a couple of practical things, health wise, maybe a couple of practical things, time wise, when it almost seems impossible with little kids that you could even do that?
Yeah, that's a great question. And actually, that's a lot of what my book talks about, is the different parts of your life. And there's about 5 parts of our life that I call kind of your tank. Like when you put time and effort in these times, they fill your tank. They give you back. So kind of like putting gas in your car. And that's the physical part, the mental and emotional part, our soul and spiritual care, our self-love, and support. And those are the areas. I even have a quick tank assessment. It's a picture, and you can like just quickly rank yourself. And the people that have used that are sometimes surprised. They're like, oh, this area is low for me. That's where I need to be focusing. I thought it would be this. But sometimes just looking at a picture kind of short circuits the worrying in our brain, and we can just quickly see what's going on with us a little easier. And that is something, if anyone here is interested, I could email that to you. There's a copy of it in the book, but just reach out and I'd be happy to share that.
Well, on that note, if anybody wants that, just email it to Russ at the17laws.com, and I'll make sure I'll forward that to you, and you'll get that. So
Yeah.
anything anybody has questions on or any of that, you can send it straight to Russ at the17laws.com, and I'll get it, and Holly will latch onto it, and she'll be responsive. Go ahead.
Sounds good. Yes. So, just high level physical things we can do. It sounds elementary, but sleep is a lot of times the thing that we cut back on because we're trying to fit everything in, when it is one of the things that can help us be more effective and get things done quicker. And I think that was one of the areas I struggled the most, was getting enough sleep. So it's always with the caffeine or the energy vitamins, or trying to figure out how to have energy when in truth I wasn't getting enough sleep. So now I try to be a lot more purposeful. I've realized I need way more sleep than I thought I did, and it does make a huge difference.
Well, I find that interesting because you probably were not getting sleep because you felt like you didn't have time for it. And in fact, now that you have more sleep, you actually have more time and you could actually get more done. Again, counterintuitive, right?
Counterintuitive, yes it is. Same with food. A lot of times we'll maybe consume comfort food, but it actually makes us crash. So it actually takes away from our energy. So being a little more careful with, not so much the processed foods and the sugars and the things that can make us crash, but trying to eat things maybe a little less processed, a little more often, a little more healthy, so that you're giving your body that nutrition. Because it is, I think of it like a car. It's like this is what we're driving around in, and we're only going to go as fast and as far as we can as it lets us go. If it puts the brakes on, you're not going anywhere and you're not doing anything. So you really do kind of have to maintain it and say, what kind of gas am I putting in my car? From a physical perspective, food, drinking lots of water, movement and exercise, like you were talking about. Exercise and movement's a great stress releaser.
Holly, one of the things that you're talking about on the eating right, some people look at this like, oh man, I got to go on a diet, I can't do that. And my suggestion would be to people just, worst case, eat a little better, eat a little less, cut back on some sugar when you can. Instead of drinking 3 Cokes a day, drink 1, or grab a glass of water every other Coke you want, or some of those things, and not kill yourself. And sometimes on the movement, I doubt there's a human left that doesn't have an iPhone or some sort of phone that tracks their steps. And whatever steps you're at, I would say tomorrow try to have a few more. So if you're only doing 2,000 steps a day, maybe try to do 3, and then get to 4 and 5, and then hopefully get to 10. And some of the things that I've seen people do, like even I would park at the far end for the grocery store and walk in. And if I'm on the phone talking to someone for a long period of time, I'm making laps around my office, or if I'm at home, I might even go outside and walk around the yard the entire time. And it's amazing what happens. Those little bitty steps will add up over time. And again, we're talking about single parents who may have 1 or 2 toddlers that are tugging at mom or dad's leg constantly during that, would make it kind of hard. So, which may mean that, even though you don't, it's about that counterintuitiveness, to get to moving and to eating better actually gives you more energy than not doing that, which is kind of crazy. On your, you're about to share about, I guess the you were getting into the exercise part of it, get out and moving just a little bit. And so I'll turn it back over to you on that.
Yeah, I agree with you on the food things. Even if you're trying to manage your energy and eat a little bit better, if you are having something sugar or sweet, sometimes having a little bit of protein with it can make you not crash from it as much. So even just adding in a little bit of yogurt or something, so that you don't crash from it if you're doing it. Like you said, little baby steps help a lot. Water helps a lot. And then with movement, it's, when you've got kids, you can get them involved. And I think we all know getting them out, and not wearing them out, but kind of getting their energy out. Getting their energy out's important. And so trying to do that together with them can be one way that helps. One thing I found with just things you wouldn't think of, but like stretching when you get up in the morning feels really good, but it does kind of get your oxygen and your muscles flowing and firing. That's a good thing that helps. Putting on like some happy, energetic music and dancing around can do so much for your stress and your mood. It's one of those really quick, sometimes when I'm so tired, I'll just put on some fun music and dance around and just feel completely different. And that's just kind of an easy way too.
I like that. Turn on some 1970s stuff and crank it up. And if it doesn't get you to moving, then it's probably not the right music for you.
Yeah.
So you also mentioned there's mental and emotional care. And I think we'd be remiss because some people are thinking, okay, I'm watching a show on single parenting, and now they're talking I need to eat better. Well, it's sometimes we don't connect the dots that really eating better and getting more sleep actually makes us a better single parent, because it's hard to function as a single parent if you're exhausted and so there's a mental and emotional side of this too. How would you, maybe you've already addressed it, the things, and maybe I need to skip ahead to the next one, but what's your thoughts on the mental and emotional?
Emotional. And I do go into more detail in the book, but kind of mental, when we're looking at our mental care, one thing that we can think about is that our brains are wired, they say, like a caveman's brain. So we are constantly assessing risk. It's trying to keep us alive. It's trying to keep us, so we're going to be bombarded just kind of naturally with our brain trying to help us survive with the negative. This could happen, this could happen, this could happen, this could happen. And so realizing that that's what your brain is doing, but you don't have to buy into it all the time. You can say, hey, that's a good point. Or you can say, I don't have to figure out every possible bad thing that can happen right now. I can stop and I can think of the good that can happen.
On that caveman thing, I think it's interesting. Tracy, she calls me the partly sunny, half full, partly sunny kind of a guy, because I'm always looking. And I think some of that caveman kind of thing, what you're talking about, really is worry. And how many times do we ever worry about something that actually comes true?
Exactly.
It hardly ever happens.
Yeah.
And this is something that Tracy and I learned. Paul Young wrote that book, The Shack. And they were interviewing him one time, and somebody, you probably need to look it up on YouTube. It's a cool testimony. But we get in spots where it's really tough. And one of the things, I love what he shared, and we've lived by this, and we've had to do it, and that is, we just need enough grace for the day. Now I remember back growing up in church, these little old ladies would say, one day at a time, sweet Jesus, and I would think, oh, if I hear one more verse of that, I'm gonna puke. And then I realized that, man, those ladies probably actually had it down one day at a time. And so Tracy and I will say that, hey, we just need enough grace for the day. And we've had times in our life where we needed just enough grace to lunchtime, or we needed enough grace to bedtime, and we better go to bed early tonight. And by that I mean it's really hard. I mean, sometimes we're trying to take on the weight of the world right now, that I really just need to get to bedtime. Am I going to make it till bedtime? Yeah, that's going to happen. I don't have to raise the kids and have a college fund and have them a car at 16 and who they're going to marry and all that. I don't have to have the weight of that on me right this second. I just need enough grace to get. Maybe sometimes you're coming home from work and you just need enough grace to get through dinner. Then I need enough grace to get there. Okay, I'm going to make it to bedtime. So I'll let you gather your thoughts here on the next part of that, on the mental and emotional side of things.
Yeah. So another tool we can use with mental and emotional care is just paying attention to what are we feeding our minds? What are we letting in? So what TV shows are we watching? The news. Like the news for me is an example. I can watch the news and the next thing I know, my stomach's in knots and I can be sick to my stomach and full of worry. And it's nothing I can even control. It's nothing I can do anything about. So I have to limit my news to certain things so that I'm not out there worrying about all this stuff I can't control, and I'm able to just focus on, hey, I can control these things, so I'm just going to focus on those right now, kind of limiting that exposure. Or
let me jump in on that.
Sure.
I think that is true for anybody, and I can't watch the news for the same reason. And I can spot a news junkie, and I can spend 5 minutes with someone. I can say, okay, you spend way too much time watching the news with their attitude. In fact, the first thing I'll share with people, whether it's single parenting or not, if they're having any kind of issues, is no more news. And I learned that a long time ago. We stopped taking the paper. I don't look at the news. And some people say, hey, Russ, you're sticking your head in the sand. But man, it messes with me and my attitude. And I always said, if I need to know something, somebody will tell me. And so far,
that's what I have found.
20 years, somebody will come tell me if I need to know if the world's coming to an end. And so I don't watch the news either. And I can tell even with Tracy when she watched the news or somebody else, and it's like, okay, it's not that just bad to watch it, but you can, when it really starts messing with you, then you're digging a bunker in the backyard, and then you're, you're buying flour and ammo and all that stuff because the world's coming to end. But that's too much, and especially, man, you're a single parent just trying to get through dinner time.
Yeah, you don't need any extra stress.
No.
You got all you can say grace over right here.
Yeah, let's not invite more.
Exactly. Yes. And another thing is you can watch out for is the people you have in your life. And, do you have friends that are giving you a lot of negative or harsh? And is that maybe bringing you down? And maybe do you need to limit, are they saying helpful, encouraging things?
Right.
Are they saying negative things that might be bringing you down, and paying attention to who do I keep around me, and are they encouraging and supportive, and are there people maybe I need to limit a little bit just for my own sanity and peace of mind? And so paying attention to all the things around us that we're letting in, kind of like that garbage in, garbage out, that cliche we've all heard. So it's just kind of limiting that and trying to let the good in.
I think that's neat. And you don't necessarily, I think, have to get rid of your friends. Maybe you could be the positive person and start turning the conversations around to positive. But if it's really not the case, then you're gonna, I agree. I don't want to hang around people who are doomsday people all day. Anyway, it messes with you no matter. So if you're a single parent, so we're talking about eating right, taking care of yourself, making sure that you're getting rest, make sure that mentally and emotionally things are well, because if none of those are true, how can you be an effective parent? If you're emotionally, mentally, physically a wreck, it's going to be so hard. So
Right.
More on the mental and emotional. What other thoughts do you have?
So when you are thinking about your thoughts, you're going to get bombarded with thoughts, but you don't necessarily have to take off with them. You can redirect them. And emotions, same type of thing. They're indicators for us of stuff that's going on, maybe thoughts we're having, and we can use them for information. For example, like if I'm angry, maybe someone hurt my feelings or crossed boundaries. I don't have to just let the anger take off with me. I can take a minute and go, okay, so anger's shown me something happened. Now what do I want to do about it, and detach from it a little bit. And then another way, a tool I think is really powerful is gratitude is a great way to switch, because I learned a while back that a neuroscientist told us that fear and gratitude those emotions can't exist in your brain at the same time. So if you're in fear or anxiety of some sort, you can very quickly just swap and start thinking of things you're thankful for. I'm
That's
thankful
fascinating.
for my breath. I'm thankful for my kids. I'm thankful for my legs that walk. And I'm thankful for the sun. And just like that, and by doing that, your emotions, the chemicals in your body have to switch over. So you can use gratitude lists anytime. And they're a great way to help you manage your mental and your emotional space.
Wow, that is fascinating. Remind everybody that Holly did graduate from Vanderbilt University with a degree in human development, so she's putting this stuff to work. We were kidding around on the other day on the phone about the only thing, a class that's ever come in handy for me was my whole life in school and college and everything was typing class.
Yes.
So I can type. So I'm glad to hear you're putting that education to use. Mental and emotional. Is there something else that's jumping out at you on the mental and emotional side?
There's definitely things that we can do. Affirmations, things that you know to be true. You can build your list. I am loving. There's a lot of promises God gives us that you can talk about. But saying affirmations is a great way to kind of retrain your brain to think about the positive, to think about the things that are true. And you can have a list of things you want to remind yourself of, that you look at in the mornings or at night before bed, or keep with you. That's a great tool, as well as like a gratitude list.
Yeah, are you literally listing this down? Do you have this written down somewhere or notes on your phone?
It's in the book.
In the book.
It's in the book. So like for each one of these chapters, it's like, here's, like a little deeper dive on each one. And then at the end, here's some tools that you could use in each of these areas.
And what's the name of the book?
It is Your Next Level Now, the Single Parent Compass to a Life You Love. And then I have a recent one that came out of COVID and the pandemic that's a little shorter and sweeter, and it's about conquering crisis. So it's a little deeper dive into those tank areas that we talked about. And these tools, like it has some lists in there that you can use. Here's some promises that are true, some truths, and here's the list. You can use this or make your own.
That's great, and they're both available on Amazon?
They are.
Oh,
Yes.
good.
Yes.
Good. I know I have one copy, and you just gave me another, so that's good stuff. And you mentioned, is it spiritual care?
Spiritual care, yes. And I would say for me, well, we all have like our soul. Some people call it soul, some people call it our spirit, but it's kind of like the essence of who you are, the real you. And that's the part of us that is probably the best qualified to be making our decisions for us. And using the input we get from, our thoughts and our emotions. But our spirit is that I guess where it's coming back to who are you really, apart from everything around you. And I feel like when we get in touch with that part of ourselves, who we were created to be, that we are closer to finding our purpose and our meaning in life. And for me, spiritual care is a huge part of what has been getting me through as a single parent and ever since. I'm sure people have different relationships with God and different understandings and different phases with God. But I would say that I've probably been through all of the phases with God, you name it.
Well, you mentioned God too, because I know we chatted about this on the phone, that not everybody believes there is a God, mm-hmm. and there's still a single parent. And you also have people who are probably pretty mad, like, okay, God, why did you let me marry this guy? Why am I stuck in this spot? I have no money, I have nothing, I have 2 kids. He ran off and left, or she ran off and left, or. Mm-hmm. And I got a friend of mine who's got 9 children, some are adopted, and she decided just up and leave. Mm-hmm. So it's not always the women mostly, but there's also the guys too. Mm-hmm. And a lot of them, I'm sure, are mad. Like, if they do believe there's a God, they're probably pretty upset at him. Why did you allow this to happen when you could easily prevented it, mm-hmm. or scoop me out of it or something? So what do you say to those people who are maybe pretty upset and, man, don't tell me about God right now. I just need to get my kids fed and get them to bed.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. I would say been there, done that, all of those. Yes. If I were going to tell you my story a little bit, it's the story of going through all those phases that you just brought up. Like, I remember meeting God when I was 12 and really feeling him, but somehow in the process after that of going to church and learning, I got a picture of a God that was very concerned about rules and me doing everything right. And I was like, I'm trying really hard, but I can't do everything right. I just can't. And I would get stressed about it. And then I remember going through that phase where I'm like, no, I just can't do it. I call it my prodigal period, my questioning. It's like, this is what I was taught, but what do I really believe? Do I really believe there's a God? And if so, what's he like? Because things just aren't piecing together for me. And then when I became a single parent and was in a position of, wow, there's things in my life that I can't do anything about and I don't have control over and I need help. Like, I can't do this on my own. Then I found a whole new God. I mean, it was the same God, but my understanding had changed. And I learned that he was there, he wanted to help, and he wanted to be there to fill in the blanks for everything that I needed. And he was a God of power and love, that when I prayed, things happened, things changed. And
like what? What did you pray for and things changed? I mean, you didn't share a couple of those stories.
Okay, there's a ton, but I'll give examples. I mean, I just remember praying every morning on the way to work. Okay, God, you know this is more than I can do. So I'm really going to need you to show up today and get me through the day. And we got through the day. And there were times when the dishwasher broke and I didn't have the money to fix it. And a neighbor would come over and say, oh, I know someone who has a free dishwasher. Let me go get it for you and install it. Or
So you actually prayed for a dishwasher.
I did.
Yeah, and one showed up.
Yes, and I mean, there were times where I didn't have enough money to pay my bills. And I don't know, I prayed about it, and some way or another, there was always enough to cover things. Opportunities would come up to make some bills go down. Money would arrive. It was just...
Like money would show up in the mailbox?
Money would show up in the mailbox that
Wow.
I did not think was coming. Yes. So it didn't mean that things weren't tough, but it was like we made it. There was always enough. We were provided for, and I began to see it and appreciate it. I remember the time I figured out God was trying to help me with my grocery shopping, because I'd be grocery shopping, and I would see something and go, oh, no, we have that at home. And then I would get home, and we were out. And that happened to me a few times before I realized, I'm like, oh, God, you're trying to help me with my grocery shopping. So now I've learned when I'm in the grocery store and that happens, go on and get it. And sure enough, when I get it home, it's an empty box sitting there, and it really
Wow.
is out. And so just little things like that. Things like my daughter not being able to find her lunchbox, at school, and her school being known for stealing, a lot of stealing. So she's like, there's no way, it's gone, because it was a really nice lunchbox. And she prayed about it, and she's like, Mom, you're just not even going to believe. It was just sitting there by the door. And she's like,
Wow.
I know that was like God helping me find my lunchbox. And so little things and big things, strength when you need it. There are times that I was just at my wit's end, and she might be acting up, and I didn't know what to do. And I would just go in the next room and pray and go, okay, now you say you're her father, and I really need you to show up right now and be her father and help me with her. Because one, I need to know what to say, but I also need you to help come in. And so I think that being able to do that and feel like I had that help when I needed it was a big deal.
Yeah, and that's what a cool relationship you've developed with God through your whole life. This is unheard of. A lot of people don't even think that's possible, that the God in the Bible is just a bunch of cute stories, and he's not in the miracle-making business today. And we could probably swap stories this afternoon. Maybe before long I might share a couple with you. Share with me a little bit about your car story.
Oh,
when we're on the
yeah.
phone. I don't want us to stop without sharing that.
The car story. So I had a car given to me, and
So
there were a
given
couple,
to you, that's
yeah,
pretty cool right there.
It was passed down from my grandma. It was a super cool car, but it had the check engine light on, and so and it was leaking oil, and I filled it up every week with oil, but I would take it to the mechanic, and he said, your check engine light's on, and that car is just not going to last very long. And I'd be like, yeah, I know. But I just kept, and that car lasted literally for 3 years. It
Wow.
just kept going, and it was like, I knew it had God's protection on it, and I was afraid to give it to someone that it would just break down. But it literally lasted 3 years.
That's awesome. I think it's really cool when people realize that God's still in the miracle making business. That it's not just the babies being born and the sun coming up in the morning. Truly, as we talked about the God math, what I see is we got 2,000 in the bank, we spend 1,000, and we have 3,000 left over. And it's the stuff you can't explain other than it's a God thing. So I've got a good friend of mine just recently. He was struggling financially. I said, man, you got to tithe. And he said, I can't afford to tithe. And I said, man, you have to. He said, I can't. It's not even physically possible. I said, trust me. Don't trust me. I give you example after example. So he started tithing. And what he didn't realize is God's not limited to his paycheck. And it's just like one thing after another just keeps happening. And not that it's a formula, but kind of God's promised that when you do, he'll honor that. And you mentioned on the car, I remember it was so funny. We have our own missions organization too, and we were taking a group out to reservation out in New Mexico. And so quite a few of us going, so we're in two 15-passenger vans out there, and we rented a really nice one, and they ran out of those, so we had a junker one we had to rent, and it was junk. Anyway, and we were 25 miles off of dirt roads out in the middle of nowhere, and the junky one started messing up, and we're thinking, oh no. I mean, we're in the middle of nowhere anyway, and 25 miles past the middle of that. And so we all decided, hey, we're just going to gather everybody around, and we put hands on that van and we prayed for it. And it started right up, and it made it the 1,600 miles back to Tennessee we were. So that made me think of that story. Not going to help the single moms other than the praying part. That's the thing. So on the provision side too, are there any other stories you wanted to share on that? Because one of the things we started talking about was you were doing you're relying on God spiritually, and there's a lot of people who are miffed at God and say, man, how does this happen? And I know you were one of those people who were pretty miffed and said, man, how could you allow this to happen to me? And then you've that since changed, obviously. So those people, what are you thinking?
For the people that are mad, well, what I guess I've learned and been taught, but believe, is that we're living in a broken world. And it says we're going to have trials, tribulations, distress, and frustration. That's always been understood. There's collateral damage everywhere out there, and it is going to affect us. But it doesn't mean God's doing it, and it doesn't mean he's not working in it. And what I found to be the case is that the way he loves us with that, it's an unbreakable, unstoppable love, that there's nothing we can do or anyone else can do that will stop it. So it really can be trusted to work for our best. And that he can put us into a state of what I call being fireproof, so that we are at a peaceful, calm, trusting, faith-filled state, regardless of what's happening to us. And that we actually have power to change things that are out of our control just with our prayers. And we are not helpless. And that, the most powerful being in the whole universe loves you and wants to help you. And you just ask. That's kind of a big deal, to go, wow, I've got this person on my side who happens to be the most powerful person in the universe, and he loves me and he wants me to ask him for help. And then he's going to show up. But just like we're parents, if our kid asks us to play with nails, we're not going to give them the nails. We know something that would be better for them. And so sometimes, the other analogy I like to think of is if your child or your friend was going towards a cliff and you were trying to get their attention and saying, no, don't go off the cliff. What would you do to stop them and get their attention? Would you throw a rock that might trip them, and maybe that rock hit, but it kept them from going over the cliff? You probably would.
Oh yeah, it might tackle them.
Yeah, because in the end, you know things they don't know.
Right.
Just like a parent. And so we don't have to step into that place of protection and provision and care, but it's always available. And it doesn't matter what you've done, or, just to realize that God's not mad at you, that he's not up there judging you and being critical, that he really does love you in a way you can't imagine. That's everything. And I think when you are a single parent, there's promises in the Word, even about how he's our husband. or your maker is your husband. So a lot of times it would say, okay, you say you're my husband and I really need you to show up right now, or you say you're my daughter's father. Well, and he has a really special place in his heart and has all along in Scripture for fatherless and widows and orphans. And that's defined a little differently today, but it still has his heart's attention. And so and I've always told my daughter, I'm like, you're really special to God, and he's going to show up for you in special ways. So you can know that. You do have this perfect father. And your father he loves you in a way that's not going to be the way you want it to be. It's just what he can do. And so he's not going to be able to show up for you. But God can make up the difference in a way that is even better, because he's there all the time. Even earthly fathers, you got to go to work. You can't be with the child when they're at school or when they fall down or hurt or they're in a car wreck. But God is there, like 24/7. He's never asleep. And so, I would even go on dates with God when I was as a single parent, still do. And where I'd say, okay, God, we're going on a date, and let's go do something fun. And we would always get to do whatever I wanted to do. It was really sweet. But, I wanted to go eat some Greek food or get some chocolate or go shopping. He was all about that. So
I think that's neat. I know God has promised that, and you ask not because you have not. And what's really cool is you're living it. It's not theory. God has promised to be the father to Lindsey, has promised to be your husband, has promised these things, and you've called on him, and he's lived up those promises and come through, and time after time after time after time. It wasn't one cool story. It's 20 some odd years of story after story after story, day after day. And one of those things brought us here together today. Some of the things we've chatted about today had to do with take care of yourself as a single parent. Take care of you physically, emotionally, mentally, spiritually. Those things are so huge. We're going to have another show here soon, and we're going to talk about some of the ways to parent as a single parent, and some of those things that'll make your life so much better, easier, and keep your sanity. Some things we're going to share in the next show. You can get both of Holly's books on Amazon, so you for sure want to do that. If you have any questions at all, you can email me. I'll get them to Holly. Just put in the subject line Holly, do Russ at 17laws.com, and I'll get every one of those and forward them on to Holly. And then Holly, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for sharing your heart. Thank you for blessing us with your stories and just pouring your heart out. And we'll look forward to the next show to chat about some more of the parenting ideas. And now that we talk about taking care of the parent this time, which I'm sure we'll touch on again, but this time we're going to be how do you actually be a parent to the child?
Okay, sounds good.
Be sure to check out both of Holly's books on Amazon. No doubt you'll love those. And I'm excited to see you on part 2 coming up next.